Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to the Czech Republic once again for the first time in what feels like absolutely ages. Now, we're going to go to a brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys are a relatively new addition to the Czech beer scene, and they are actually really quite interesting because the beers that you get from this brewery are not normally what you would expect from the Czech Republic. But they've built a very good reputation for themselves over the last few years. This is a beer that I've heard very good things about, so needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Mikulov, which is in Moravia, in the kind of southeastern part of the country, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Wild Creatures. I'm not sure whether we should call them Pivovari Wild Creatures, but anyway, this particular beer is called Fly With Me Apricots. It comes in at 5.9% ABV, and it is basically like an apricot lambic style beer. So yeah, this should be very, very interesting. Now, as I've told you on the channel before, there are some great Czech beers out there. The vast majority of breweries in the Czech Republic are, of course, brewing the Czech lagers, you know, the Svetli, Letsak, Cherny, Tmavy type beers, but there are some really interesting American style and quirky craft breweries out there. So yeah, you know, you've got Siberia are probably the best known American style craft brewery from Czech Republic these days. Matushka were another one that I was very impressed with when I was there a few years ago. And then yeah, we've got Wild Creatures as well, who seem to be making waves in the sour beer scene. So yeah, really cool to find breweries like this from the Czech Republic. But I do want to go down there and spend a little bit of time and just kind of destroy myself with lager. I would have a very, very good time doing that. But yeah, always cool to introduce new Czech breweries to you here on the channel. So let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. A 5.9% apricot lambic style beer from Wild Creatures in Mikulov in the southeast of Moravia in the Czech Republic. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Wild Creatures. So this is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like in there. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Czech playlist along with a number of other things, but I do hope I can add to the Czech playlist a bit more regularly as time goes on. But yeah, check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well. But let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Wild Creatures. So, Wild Creatures can trace its history back to 2011, but they released their first beers under this brand in 2016. And the brewery itself can be found in Mikulov, which is to the south of Brno, almost right on the Austrian border, in fact. And you'll find that in Czech's eastern region of Moravia. So, the main people behind this company are Libor Ilčík, along with his wife Jitka Ilčíková. Hopefully I pronounced those right, and I do apologise for any bad Czech pronunciations in this video. But Libor is actually a biochemist by trade, and he worked for a number of years in a winery, and he gradually got interested in beer through home brewing. But Jitka actually has a background as a financial analyst, and apparently they decided to open a brewery together when she was on her maternity leave. But she, of course, comes from a wine-producing region of the Czech Republic, and her family produced their own wines for a long time. And apparently, in 2009, she and Libor started taking care of her father's vineyard, and things just kind of grew from there. But initially, they started brewing lagers under the name Pivovari Mamut, which in English is mammoth. And they started using a 500 litre brew kit with about 2,000 litres of fermentation capacity, and they've gradually just built this up over the years and built up their customer base and so on. But Jitka apparently travelled a lot with her job, and she was introduced to Lambic beers during her time in Belgium, and this prompted her to experiment with these and try to produce some for herself, because, you know, being quite interested in wine, she liked the sort of flavour profiles. that you got from these beers as well. But in 2016, she found that her Lambic experimentations had worked, and she decided that she wanted to release these. But she chose to create a new brand called Wild Creatures because these beers were so different than the lagers that they were producing and the lagers that are quite widely available throughout the Czech Republic. And so these guys are the first brewery to specialise in the production of spontaneously fermented beers in the Czech Republic. But in total, they have around 200 barrels, a number of which come from France, but most of them actually come from wineries in Moravia, I believe. So yeah, you'll get some very, very unique sour beers from Wild Creatures, actually, things that you're not going to find from a flavour perspective from other places. But as of June 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 30 different kinds of beer under the Wild Creatures name, but from what I understand, there are quite a few different vintages. You know, they are brewing the same beer like every year, basically, and releasing a new vintage of it, which is quite a common thing for these sort of Lambic style breweries. I know that Jackdaw in Uppsala here in Sweden do a similar thing, in Jämerdal and Hantverksbryggeri further north in Kalix, they do that as well. But yeah, that is everything that I can really tell you about about Wild Creatures for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, though, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the bottle and stuff before we open the beer up. Now, this beer, I actually bought this when I was in the Czech Republic a few years ago, and it kind of got pushed to the back of my cupboard, actually. So I'm hoping that this beer, well, it will be a Lambic, so I'm sure it will have matured quite nicely. But this beer, I believe, is about 3 years old, maybe 4 years old, if I'm not mistaken. It was bought a couple of years ago, and I actually, you know, if I think back, then this, when it comes to this brewery, that would have been very, very early in their history. I bought this one in Olomouc in a little shop there, if I'm not mistaken, and it caught my eye. I think it was the owner that recommended it to me. When I tried to review it when I came home, I actually couldn't find any information on the brewery, but since a few years have passed, of course, the reputation has built up, and there are a few articles and things out there about the brewery, which is great to see. But yeah, the artwork on this one is really nice there. You can see the little hummingbird enjoying the flower and some of the apricots and things there too. It's a plain black bottle cap. This one, you can see it's in one of these little stubby Belgian style bottles, and you can see Wild Creatures on the side too. So like I said to you, this one is, I think it says on the side it's 5.9% Lambic. 5.9% Lambic style beer. This one is brewed using 3 types of apricots which are local to the Moravia region, and then that is a typical fruit for this region apparently, and it's aged somewhere between 9 and 18 months. It doesn't actually say on the bottle, well, at least I can't read Czech, so that's probably the thing. It doesn't say exactly how long it's been aged for. But yeah, this is the Fly With Me Apricots. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we do. Hopefully this thing does not explode on me. So, oh, it's behaving itself all right. Not bad, not bad, just a little bit. That's what you always have to be careful of with these beers. I got most of that, but there we are. So we'll just pour this one slowly and let it behave itself. But yeah, I think that's going to be okay. That's not bad actually for a beer that's 3 or 4 years old. It only got a little bit excited, not too much. But right, let's have a little look at this before the head disappears. As you can see, the beer poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say, that's actually a perfect white head. I'm kind of surprised about that. But yeah, it's about a perfect white head, and that is just kind of fading away now to be a thin foamy layer. I think we're going to have a ring around the edge of the glass, but yeah. It looks very, very nice in that particular sense. But yeah, not surprised about this one in terms of its colour and things. But yeah, the head is going to linger there. You can see it's got some nice, real foamy bubbles to it, and a few kind of medium size ones too. But yeah, looks very, very good. So we'll get rid of the brewery notes now. But yeah, colour-wise, this is pretty much exactly what you would expect from a kind of apricot Lambic beer. I think to you guys on the camera it's actually looking a little bit darker than it is to the naked eye. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker coloured beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour of it too. And when it comes to these more kind of traditional, old school Belgian, woody, lambic, whatever we're going to call them, sour beers, the adjunct can play quite a role. So quite a lot of the colour in this one will indeed be coming. Most of it will be coming from the malty character, of course, and some of it from the actual adjuncts and things too. And you have to remember that lambic beers quite often are blends. So yeah, you get a younger beer blended with a slightly older beer, and they're both aged in different things quite normal. That's half the art with lambic beer, is the blending, if you like. So yeah, this one certainly looks the part. I would describe the colour of this one to the naked eye as being a kind of, it has got a little bit of like a West Coast IPA type amber note to it, so like a kind of medium to slightly darker amber. It's got a bit of a kind of natural haze to it. There was a wee bit of sedimentation in the bottle there. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the surface of the beer there. I can actually see them coming up. But appearance-wise, this beer looks pretty much as you would expect from a beer that's called an apricot lambic style. Yeah, I don't think we really need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. So we can have a wee look at the aroma and just see what this beer is going to have in store for us. I'm really curious about this. Ooh, I'm going to say this smells very, very nice actually. Yeah, aroma-wise, this is really interesting because you can smell the sort of lambic notes out of this one. Now, I don't think it's very common at all to actually get an apricot lambic. Probably the only brewery that are going to do that would be Tilkeen, actually. I'm sure I might well have tried a Tilkeen from them at some point. But yeah, the way this smells is really nice. You get the lovely kind of soft, juicy apricot on the top, but you still get the vinous character that you want from a lambic beer. You've got quite a little bit of maltiness and woody character in there as well. Aroma-wise, this is just really nice. So let's try and break it down and describe it for you a little bit more in depth. So yeah, the backbone of the beer, you have this lovely, smooth, oaky character in there, and the oak almost has a little bit of vanilla to it. So yeah, you've got that lovely smooth American oak in it's not American oak, it smells like American oak. This is one of the things, the European oak tree and the American oak tree are completely different species, and you know, normally the American oak gives you a little bit of a smoother character, a little bit more vanilla, whereas the European oak is a little bit drier. Whereas the aroma of this beer is the woody character in this one is really interesting, because I'm guessing these Czech wineries have been around for, you know, a very, very long time. But of course, because of the era of communism, they probably wouldn't have had access to American oak until the 1990s. So I don't know. As I say, I'm not a wine nerd. I don't know very much about wine at all, to be honest with you, let alone Czech wine. So I'm kind of guessing there. But the oaky notes that you get in this one are very, very smooth and almost a little bit more like American oak. I don't know how long oak barrels, wine barrels last for, actually, whether you can only use them once or what, but yeah. But the oakiness you get out of this is very, very smooth. You get a little bit of an almost vanilla, kind of butterscotchy note out of it too, and you can smell, it's got a little bit of a kind of, you can smell a little bit of the kind of white wine, the white green grapey vinous character coming out of it. But above that, you do get some of the malty notes from the beer itself, like there's a little mix of a kind of sweet wholemeal brown bread and a sweeter white bready character as well. Maybe little hints of a very slight kind of cream cracker or something in there, which again is very, very nice. And above that, you have, above that, you have some really nice kind of, you do get a little bit of a, like Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy note out of this beer. A little bit of biscuit as well, actually, which I find really quite interesting. Yeah, I think on the malty and yeasty side of things, I don't think there's really much more we need to say about that side of the beer. In terms of the hoppy character of this one, you know, with this beer being 3 or 4 years old, most of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this. And as I've said in sour beer reviews before, it's always interesting to ask brewers and blenders what their mentality is with hopping sour beers. You know, obviously, if you put fruit into a beer that has hops in it, the fruit will suppress a little bit of the kind of hoppy bitterness. But again, if you're going for a sour beer, you don't want the hoppy bitterness to overpower the sourness. So quite often, what they used to do with the likes of Flanders Reds and Huises and Creeks and all this sort of thing was they used to add older hops that had lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency, and then you still got the hoppy flavours, but they were obviously a little bit less intense. So this one, it smells like it's got hops in it, and I'm guessing they would use Czech Sats, Žatec, and for me, out of the noble hops that you get from Slovenia, Germany, Czech, so on, the Czech ones are a little bit more kind of spicy, and you can get a little bit of that in this aroma. There's a little bit of an earthy sort of note to it. You've got a little bit of a kind of herbal character as well, which you expect from any noble hop, to be honest with you. But you get a nice little bit of brighter floral aromaticity and some kind of more zesty, grassy notes out of this one. It's kind of interesting how well that is held up considering how old this beer is, because the Czech hop, the Žatec hop, I'm sure is only about 5% alpha acid, so I don't know if the beta acid rating is quite high, because remember, alpha acid is like how bitter is the hop, beta acid is how long will the bitterness last. So maybe the Žatec has a little bit more of a, it maybe has a slightly higher beta acid rating, but yeah, certainly getting a good little bit of floral and grassy character out of this beer for sure. But beyond that, you start to get the fruity notes from the apricots, of course, when the beer is called what is it again? Fly With Me Apricots. Fly With Me Apricots. You would expect that. So as I said, you do get a little bit of the kind of sharper, soury sort of things. You get a little bit of that kind of slightly lemony, citricy, vinous citricy note out of this one. But of course, you've got a few other fruits in there behind the apricots. There's a little bit of like an oily pear, a little bit of a sultana and things. But yeah, the apricot notes you get out of this one are really nice, quite juicy, not too dry. Yeah, the aroma of this beer really is very, very nice. Yeah, to be honest, I think that's everything we can really say about the aroma. As I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I have to say, I'm quite impressed with what this one has in store from the aroma. So let's taste it and see what it's all about. So this is the Fly With Me Apricots, a 5.9% Lambic style apricot style Lambic beer from Wild Creatures in Mikulov in Moravia in the southeastern Czech Republic. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers, na zdraví. I'm going to say that is very, very nice actually. The thing that you find often with Lambic beers is that if you age them for a little bit, they kind of mellow out and they get a little bit sweeter and the woodiness just kind of becomes a little bit smoother. So I'm guessing that when this beer was a bit younger, I'd be curious to try, it'd be interesting to have like a fresh bottle of this to try along with the 4-year-old one or however old this beer is now. Because this one has held up very, very well, and it's aged in the same way with some of the some of the Dry Fontainens and other Belgian Lambic beers that I've had. So this kind of goes to show you the quality of stuff that that these guys can obviously do. So yeah, I think we need to try and get a hold of a few more of their beers, to be quite honest with you. I'm impressed with that. This is really, really nicely done. There are a good few breweries popping up that are doing these kind of things now. I mean, in Belgium you've even got newer generation breweries such as Alvin, who are doing these kind of old school woody type sour beers. But yeah, this is very good quality. So it's very, for me at least, from my point of reference, it's very cool to find something like this from the Czech Republic where you really wouldn't expect it. So yeah, awesome stuff. So yeah, let's break this beer down and describe it for you a bit more in depth. But I'll say that this one gives you everything you want. You've got a lovely smooth kind of woody character, you've got a little bit of maltiness in there, you've got a good little bit of the fruity character, and just a little touch of hoppy note out of it as well. But yeah, it gives you everything you would want from a lambic style beer. And as I've often said on the channel, for me, a good sour beer is one that comes in and gives you a little bit of a punch, and then it just mellows out really nicely. For me, a lot of the lambic stuff is about the aftertaste. So yeah, let's break this down then. So yeah, impact flavour with this beer, we'll talk about that first. So what you'll get is, pardon me, behind the very front tip of your tongue, you'll get that sharp kind of soury citric thing just coming into the, just behind the front of your tongue. And it comes down there, gives you a little bit of attack, then it mellows out, and it gives you a lovely kind of oily, juicy, apricot-y type note. So yeah, it goes together nice. But we'll come back to the fruits in a minute, but I think it's always good with sour beers to talk about the impact note. So, on the yeah, middle third of the palate then, the backbone of the beer, as I said, is a very smooth, nice oaky backbone there. And as I said, it kind of seems like American oak, but it almost has the same smoothness as you're going to get from some of these Belgian fodders. I mean, one of the things that really impressed me with Rodenbach was how smooth the woody character was. So it almost has a little bit of that kind of fodder type smoothness to it. So yeah, lovely smooth oaky character in there, forming the backbone of the beer. Just above the wood, the wood, it's almost like it tastes like it's kind of infused with a little bit of like Werther's original butter candy, butterscotchy type character. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on in this one. But then you have a little bit of vanilla. You have a little bit of vanilla kind of further forward on that middle third of your palate too. And then above all of this, above this kind of oily part of the wood, you have just that little bit of kind of white wine character sitting there, that sort of white, green, grapey type note. Yeah, it's really nice that the woody backbone of this beer is interesting. You get this, and into the aftertaste you get the smoothness and just a little bit of zip from the kind of wine, the white wine character. This is quite obviously aged in a white wine barrel, this one. I don't know what's more popular to drink actually in Czech, is it if it's the red wines or the white wines, but yeah. So yeah, on top of the wine part of the beer, yeah, on top of that kind of wine part of the wood, you start to get the maltiness out of the beer. So you can feel there's a little tiny touch of like a wholemeal brown bready bread crust out of this one. Then you get a layer of a kind of smooth, sweet wholemeal brown bread. Then above that you've got more of a kind of, you do have a little bit more of a kind of white bready character in there. And the white bready notes out of this one are actually quite sweet, I have to say. Yeah, so a lovely little bit of a sweeter white bready note there. And then above that, in the dead centre of your palate, you get a little bit of a more kind of smooth butter candy, butterscotchy type thing coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really quite interesting. So yeah, the malty character is very, very straightforward, but you know, it just kind of works. There's maybe a very slight nuttiness to this beer the further into the aftertaste that you go, but that could just be one of the kind of side effects of the wood, if we can call it that. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate then. Let's go to the back third of the palate. Now, as I've said on the channel many a time before, generally speaking, more bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter and juicier flavours come out further forward. So yeah, bear that in mind. But yeah, on the back third of the palate, you tend to get similar flavours, but they just come out at slightly different intensities to what you would otherwise get. So yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, you've got the same lovely smooth woody character in there, but it just has a little touch more dryness to it, which I do really like. Above that, you get the winey character again, and you can feel that is a little bit drier too. And then you have the kind of, you get a little bit of an almost bread crusty, like a brown bread crusty character there. Then the fluffy, the condensed and sweet brown bready layers there, but it's just a little bit lighter, more airy. Then above that, you've got similar with the kind of white bready characteristics. But yeah, these layers are just lighter and more airy compared to what you get in the middle third of the palate. And yeah, on top of all of that, you've got a lovely little bit of a, you can feel some of the kind of more dry, leathery, sugary notes from that Werther's Original type quality that I was talking about, spreading over into the back of that, spreading over on top of that back third of your palate. Then there's maybe just a wee touch of yeasty character above that, so it's like a very light, brown bready, farmhousey, crackery type bread there, and it's almost just wrapped in a little bit of honeycomb. I always get honeycomb on the back third of the palate for some reason, but definitely you can feel the flavour on that back third of the palate is definitely taller. Then as you move further into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together a little bit more. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really quite nice. That covers everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer, I would say. Let's go on to the sides of the palate and the hoppy side of things. Now, as I said earlier, a lot of the hoppy character has kind of dropped out of this one because of the age of the beer. As I said, I can't remember how old exactly this one is. I think it's about 4 years old. But yeah, you do still get little remnants of the kind of green component from the hops. So a little bit of earthiness in there, a little bit of herbal character. The herbal and earthy side of thing actually spreads forward quite a little bit. And I would say that the beer shows more hoppy character in the aroma than it does in the actual flavour. But yeah, you get a little touch of floral aromaticity just on the front corners of your palate, and then round the front curve of the tongue. The beer is just that little bit lighter and more grassy, but the green component of this beer, if we can call it that, is actually very, very smooth. But yeah, let's go to the front third of the palate then, and we'll look at the fruity side of the beer and the sour side of things. So the border region between front and middle third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of bready build up in there again, kind of a wholemeal brown bready type quality actually. So you've got that little bit of a kind of white bready note sitting above that, and the base, yeah, the base of that front third of your palate is the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of woody. You get a lovely, very smooth and kind of vanilla type woody character in the base. Above that, little bit of the brown bread, little bit of the white bread, and then you get some of the kind of oily fruity esters that have come out of the hops in this one. So within the oily fruity esters, at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of sultana type note, you know, dry white green grapes. And as you move further forward, it gives you a little bit more of a kind of oily, peary type quality. But then above everything else, you've got the apricot adjunct coming out of this beer. And the apricots are lovely, actually. Yeah, very juicy apricots, in fact, and they give you a little bit more dryness into the aftertaste. But yeah, you've got a lovely big, kind of juicy, apricot-y character coming out of this one, which is very, very nice. So yeah, big juicy apricot-y notes, and the sourness is just kind of the sourness, a little bit of that sourness just lingers there on the kind of front tip of your tongue. But yeah, as I say, I really like how everything sort of pieces together in this particular beer. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that particular regard. The fruity juiciness coming out of this one is great. But yeah, this is a lovely, lovely beer. This one, not quite. It's one of the kind of smoother lambics I can say that I've come across, but that kind of makes sense with the age that the beer has. But I think this one is really, really very nice. So yeah, it gets a big, big thumbs up from me. Let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So overall, I would say the mouthfeel of this beer, for me, it kind of, it's actually one of the kind of slightly more oily and slick lambics that I can say I've come across. So yeah, quite an oily and slick mouthfeel. I would say that generally it's probably right in the middle of the spectrum, but it does feel a little bit more oily than some of the other lambics that we've had. That's fair enough. But on the other than that, I would say that it's kind of as I say, very slick, oily mouthfeel. This one, really smooth carbonation. It's really nice to drinkable. IBU wise, I think probably it's got about 5 IBUs at the most. This beer really does not have much in the way of a bitterness to it. The malty side of things, lovely and smooth woody character underneath from the barrel. The malty character is quite dense, but again quite smooth, and it gives you a kind of lingering oily sweetness into the aftertaste. You get a little bit of kind of drier but still oily fruity character coming out of the beer too. But yeah, then you have the kind of sour side of things, and the sour side of this beer is not too strong. It's actually really mellow and very, very nice, and it doesn't give you too kind of strong an impact either. But I just have to say, overall, I think this is a beautiful beer, and I'm really glad that I got to try this one, and it's kind of cool to be able to review a Czech lambic beer for you here on the channel too, because you're not going to come across that all that often. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So this was the Fly With Me Apricots, a 5.9% apricot lambic style beer from Wild Creatures in Mikulov, right on the Austrian-Czech border in Moravia in the Czech Republic. Beautiful beer, this one. Just have to say, very, very impressed with it. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Wild Creatures as well, and we will see about returning to these guys again at some point in the fairly near future. But yeah, until then, check out my social media, check out Wild Creatures' social media. Do give me some other Czech brewery recommendations for the channel as well, and I will see you guys in the next review. Sláinte, skål, cheers, na zdraví.